Hey, welcome or welcome back to my channel. It's Erica. We are finally at the end of 2024 and today I'm going to be ranking all of the books that I read in the past year. Although my year's going to go a little different. I'm going to rank from December 1st of 2023 through November 30th of 2024. That's the way I'm going to do it. If you see my light being weird, you hear my blinds, it's my cat. She's chosen right now to play in the blinds, so we just have to let it happen. It is her nature. But no, that's how I'm gonna be ranking. So that's the year that I'm choosing. So I'm going to throw up, why do I keep saying that? I know that there's better ways to say what I'm trying to say. On the screen now, we're gonna switch and you are gonna see the ranking system that I'm gonna use. So editing Erica is gonna do a little switcheroo and that's coming up on the screen right now. Okay, so this is what we are gonna be using to talk about all the books that I've read this year, where we're gonna rank them. And you can see I created a very lovely ranking chart, right? At the top, hella loved it. Self-explanatory. This is like new all-time fave, top tier, literally books for what I read. The one below that, yes please. What it means is, yes please, I would like some more. I would like to read this again for the first time because it was so enjoyable. I will reread it because it was so enjoyable. It's not quite at the level of all-time fave, but I had a really great time reading it. One below that, meh, it's okay. And this is going to encompass books that, I mean, they're not bad. They weren't great, but I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay with the fact that I read this. I spent time out of my day and my life reading this book, so it's going to encompass that. Below that, we have resentful, and what it means is I feel resentful that I spent time reading this book. I have at least one book in mind that I'm going to be putting into this category. We'll see what else is going to fall into this when we go through the list. Below that is DNF that book. What it means is I really could not stand reading the book, so I just had to quit. Had to quit. Couldn't do it. F that book, in my opinion. So it should be a pretty self-explanatory level. I believe it's probably only gonna encompass books that I did actually DNF. Maybe I'll throw one in there that I finished but wish I had DNF'd, because there's definitely one that I've got in mind for that. Without further ado, let's get through this because I've got almost 60 books and I don't want to do necessarily like a feature-length film for this, so I'm not going to be doing like full book reviews on all of these, just some abbreviated thoughts on most of these books, hopefully, so we won't be here for like 2 hours. So let's get started. All right, first book, LeVar Burton, Aftermath. Oh God, okay. As a geriatric millennial, I love LeVar Burton, okay? I have very positive memories of my childhood watching Reading Rainbow. Then, of course, I saw he was on Star Trek as I got older, and I loved him there. I wanted to really like this book. Unfortunately, I didn't, and it was only because I felt like it was too short for what he was wanting to write about. I thought he had great ideas. This is a survival like a survivalist novel. So he had great ideas, but there just weren't enough pages for what he was doing. Felt like we were flying way too fast through the events for what was going on, and the pacing just did not work for me, and I really wanted to like it. I didn't hate it, but it just didn't work for me. This one is gonna go, sadly, it's gonna go to meh. It's okay, because it was okay. It wasn't bad. I just needed the execution to be different. That's all. The next one I have, oh goodness, A Ghost in the Window by Betty Wren Wright. Okay, as a child, I loved this book. I remembered like nothing about it, but I used to read other books by her too, and she does similar types of children's books like in the 80s and maybe the 90s, I don't know, a while ago. So I saw this. I think that this was a library book. I saw it come up somehow listed at the library. So I was like, you know what? Let me just read it. Read it for nostalgia, see what was actually going on there. Was it a decent, like, children's scary book, or no? Am I looking back with rose-colored glasses? Unfortunately, I'm looking back with rose-colored glasses on this one, and we are not starting out strong on this list, because this is going to have to be another one that, oh, and you're going to see the list that I'm using. It's on a page that's like, I clearly did not create this. I'm using a website page, so you might see like weird stuff come up as I'm scrolling because they're inserting like ads or whatever. We're just going to deal with it. It's the nature of the page. So what I'm going to put this in, though, unfortunately, is also going to be meh. It's okay. I did like Aftermath much more than A Ghost in the Window. So, yeah. But they both, it was okay. A Study in Drowning. This was a pretty popular book, I think, you know, since it got published very recently. Did it get published in 2024? I don't even remember. It's within the last couple years, though. I really wanted to like this book, but I really did not. And you know what? Let me open my notes for my thoughts, because there was a similar book that I read around the same time that I also had negative feelings about. I don't want to get the two confused. So hold on just a minute while I look at my thoughts on this one. Okay, this is exactly the one that I thought that it was. This had a lot of potential, and for the first 80%, I thought it was okay, even though I found the main character incredibly annoying. I really did. We were going along and it was like fine, and then a major plot point happens about 80% of the way in, which I won't give away, and it just takes the book into a completely different, really annoying and much less interesting direction. And then the climax of the story is basically non-existent. It's wrapped up in a very convenient, tidy little package, and yeah. So this one, I finished this book and I was immediately resentful that I read that whole thing. So you know what? Sorry, but that's where it's going. All right, Before They're Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. I kind of, you know what? I was going to say I kind of wish that we had done this after The Blade Itself, but you know what? It's my video and I can jump around if I want to, and maybe we're going to go for the series books in order. So let's go over to The Blade Itself, right? Blade Itself, I hella loved it, man, but it wasn't quite as good as the other two books in the series, so we're just going to do all three of these together. Blade Itself is the first book, right? And it's sort of the foundational book of the first trilogy in the First Law series. And so it was really enjoyable. Loved the characters. I loved the plot. But it just wasn't quite on the same level as the subsequent two books, so I'm going to put it in yes please, because I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I was like, yes please, Joe Abercrombie, give me more of this. I will take it. And then you know what? I immediately did. So I had Before They're Hanged. This one's definitely going into hella loved it, because I hella loved it. Strong second installment in this trilogy. And I loved it, so it's hella loved it. And same with Last Argument of Kings. Really wrapped up the first trilogy in a way that was, I don't know if I want to say like, because I mean it's not supposed to be like a happy story, but it wrapped it up in a way it was very interesting. Plots that came to fruition and wrapped up in creative ways, and you know what? I hella loved it. Hella loved the First Law trilogy in general. Book of Night by Holly Black. Is this her first adult novel? I haven't read like any Holly Black, so I don't know, but I know she's got like YA series that people seem to really like. What is it, like Cruel Prince or something like that? People seem to really love her YA stuff, but I think this was supposed to be like her first adult novel. I got through like the first chapter and I was like, I have to DNF that book. It was something about the way she writes the dialogue felt so unnatural to the point of being distracting for me. And I believe that's a me problem. Like, that's a personal preference. I don't think she's like objectively bad. That's not what I mean. For me though, if someone's gonna write dialogue, I don't know, there's not like a specific way that I need them to do it, but I guess what I can say is like when it doesn't work for me, I know. And she was like super dialogue heavy in that first chapter of this book, and I knew right away, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this, because not only is her dialogue not working for me, but she seems to be dialogue heavy in the way that she tells a story. So I DNF'd that book. Which has sucked because I was planning to read it for one of my Reddit bingo squares, but had to choose something else. So sorry. I do plan to at some point try the YA series that people really like from Holly Black, but this book just didn't do it for me. The next one, I know some people watching this, I'm sorry, you might be mad, but I can't spell treason without the T. I didn't hate this, but I had to DNF that book. Although I got like 50% or a little bit more of the way through before I DNF'd it. So it's like, it's a high DNF that book, right? I made it that far, but I just really didn't care for the two main characters. I liked the side characters, but I didn't like the two main characters. I also found it felt like a lot of the conflicts in this book, at least between, you know, with the two main characters, was a result of them just failing to communicate like people. Like they just wouldn't have a conversation that would have cleared up the problems they were having, right? And that is something that I find very annoying when I am like reading a book or watching a show and, you know, the conflict is because the characters just won't like talk to each other. I just personally find that very annoying. So I got through like 50% or a little more, and then I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So I'm sorry, but not for me. Death and the Taxman. This was a book that I got on Kickstarter, and I mean, it's about the Grim Reaper, which I really like stories involving the Grim Reaper, and an IRS agent, and somehow they're both like that was the hook, and I didn't really need to know more than that when I got it on the Kickstarter. So I read it, and you know what? Turns out it was a pretty entertaining story. I'm gonna say this was, you know what? I actually had a pretty good time reading this. There were some, I wanted it to be longer, which I know why it wasn't. I mean, you know, obviously it's like self-published, Kickstarter, whatever. But I really wanted more seeing Death like in his normal element, like the Grim Reaper. I know why we didn't, because it wasn't really part of the plot. The plot is that the Grim Reaper and this IRS agent end up like swapping bodies. And so it's pretty, I mean, it's interesting. It's funny, and I have no regrets, but I wished that I could see more of like the supernatural creatures. And he does have another book that I backed on Kickstarter as well, and I actually just got it delivered recently. I'm interested to see that, which I think the second one is going to do more of what I wanted the first one to do. So I'm going to reserve judgment. But this one was still very enjoyable. I'm going to put it in yes please, because you know what? I ended up buying his second book, David Hankins, you know, that he put on Kickstarter. So obviously I was like, yes, please, David Hankins, give me another book. So Yes, please. All right, Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones. This is the second book, I believe. Yes, it is the second one. And I did read the third one as well, so we're gonna rank these together. Okay. Don't Fear the Reaper, super strong second installment in the Indian Lake trilogy. It's, the trilogy is a slasher horror series, and we follow our main character Jade as she is encountering slasher situations. If you like slasher horror, or you just really want a good horror trilogy, this was excellent, and really enjoyed it. I would say hella loved it. Whoop. What are we doing? There we go. Why is my page rolling? There we go. Hella loved it. Don't Fear the Reaper. So good. I would say this one, so My Heart is a Chainsaw, that's the first book, but I read that last year. And I would say I also hella loved that one. Super strong first installment in this trilogy. Don't Fear the Reaper, same level. The Angel of Indian Lake was the third book in the trilogy, and it was still very good, but it just wasn't on the same level as the first two, but I thought it did a great conclusion to this trilogy. And so I'm going to put it in, yes please, because, and you know what, I'm going to put it a little higher. I'm going to put it a little higher. Come on, are you going to let me move? There we go. It was exactly what I'm looking for when it comes to a horror story. Just an author in general, you know, Stephen Graham Jones did a great job with this trilogy. Each installment felt like it had a purpose, and I really loved the main character. I was rooting for her the whole time, so had a great time. I'm definitely open to reading more by Stephen Graham Jones. Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. This, of course, is the prequel to Legends and Lattes, but of course it was written after Legends and Lattes. So we follow Viv, the main character of this series. She's an orc, while Legends and Lattes takes place when she is ending her years of adventuring. She's ready to be done, retire, go and you know, start the next chapter of her life. Bookshops and Bone Dust takes place at the very beginning of her years of adventuring, so we see a young Viv just starting out. She's thrown into a cozy, small town situation, you know, found family, maybe challenging a little bit of local evil, you know. Very enjoyable. This was not quite on the same level of enjoyment for me as Legends and Lattes. I cared a lot more about the characters in Legends and Lattes. This one wasn't bad by any means. It just didn't have that same grip. I don't know why. I don't know why Legends and Lattes spoke to so many of us the way that it did, but so still really enjoyed it. Yes, please. Would really love more from Travis Baldree. So yes, please, Travis Baldree, give me more. And you know what? I'm gonna put this right there. Dune for the first. Dune the First? Yeah, let's call it that. Because there's like a million Dune books. So this is the first Dune book, right? And I first read Dune many years ago when dinosaurs walked the earth, right? So I read it, I don't know, when did I first read Dune? I was probably in like 6th grade, probably, when I first read Dune. I remembered really enjoying it. So with the Dune Part 2 coming out, I was like, you know what, I really want to do a reread of Dune because I haven't read it in over 20 years, right? So I did, and I don't know if I just wasn't in the mood for it or what, but I was like, it's just okay. I wasn't really into the style of writing that Frank Herbert was giving me. But I feel like this was maybe just a problem with it. I was not in the mood to read this book, maybe. Like, I just wasn't in the mood for a sci-fi like that when I did it. And I also listened to part of it on audiobook because my schedule at the time was just not conducive to giving me time to like sit down and read. So I think part of it too was I just wasn't able to really focus on this book while I was reading it as much as I probably should have. So I do plan to reread it within the next few years when I'm like in the mood for a sci-fi book, and I feel like that will give me a much better much better gauge of how I really feel about this book in the current time. So unfortunately, oh God, please don't judge me. Please don't judge me. It has to go. It has to go in there. I'm sorry. Meh, it's okay. It was okay. I loved it so much when I was a kid, but I just didn't have that same feeling this time. So I'm like I said though, next few years I'm gonna try again, and we'll get my real feelings about it, hopefully. I don't know if I feel the same way, if I'm just like, it's okay, then I guess it's really okay. But I just don't know that I gave it a fair shot when I read it this year. But unfortunately, it's got to fall somewhere in my ranking, and as of this year, that's where it's falling. So all right, Call of the Bone Ships. So let's do the Bone Ships trilogy. We'll do them all together. So the first one, The Bone Ships. This is a trilogy by R.J. Barker, and if you cannot tell by the name of it, most of it takes place like at sea or sea-related things. It follows a world where a lot of it is based on seafaring, two countries in a very long-standing war with each other, and they use the old bones of sea dragons for their ships. Sea dragons are all extinct, so everyone very interested in getting and retaining these dragon bones because there's no more, and it's really the only way that they can have an edge in the war with each other. So love following the crew of the ship, the Tide Child. It's called the Tide Child trilogy. So we follow the ship, the Tide Child, and the crew as they go on various seafaring adventuring. So first one, I hella loved it. Okay. And actually, you know what? I feel like it's gonna go right there. I feel like it will. And then Call of the Bone Ships. That one was also, I hella loved it. I don't know why, but I've discovered in the last few years that I'm really into stories that take place at sea. I don't know why. I don't particularly love being at sea myself. You know, I've been on cruises. When I was a kid, we had a boat, and I was just always like, it's okay. But for some reason, I'm super into stories that involve this kind of thing. So, and then where is the third one? So The Bone Ship's Wake, also very good. It was a strong ending to this trilogy, but again, I just didn't love it as much as the first two. So I am gonna put it right here, because you know what, it was very strong. And yes, please, R.J. Barker, I will take more of your books. And actually, I do have more of his books I'm gonna be reading. But it just wasn't that hella loved it feeling, so that's where it's gonna fall. All right, Brandon Sanderson, Elantris. I have been going through the Cosmere. I'm following the reading order. Well, one of the reading orders that's listed on the Cosmere sub on Reddit. So I read Elantris as part of that, and I thought it was really enjoyable. I could definitely tell it was his first book, I guess his first published book anyway. It was not, well, first of all, it was like half the size of most of his other books. So that's one way I think you can tell that he was a newbie, because he much smaller number of pages to do the world building and tell the plot. But it you could see, you know, he always has a unique way of developing magic within his stories, and the different ideas is for, like in this story, we're following a city that's sort of the city and the inhabitants suddenly develop this curse, and we're following the main characters as they try to figure out why and if there's a way to reverse it and maybe rediscover some forgotten magic in the world. It was really enjoyable, and I am pretty sure he said that he's planning to write a sequel. The man is a machine with what he writes, but I think now that the first arc of Stormlight Archive is done, then maybe he's gonna focus on this. But I would absolutely read the sequel because I was very interested in this one. You know what I'm gonna put? It was better than okay. It wasn't. It was. I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it right there, because you know what? He has much stronger books for me that I enjoyed. Like, were gripping. I didn't find this gripping. I wasn't like. This was not a Final Empire, right? Mistborn Final Empire. This was not that, but it was still good. So yes, please, Brandon Sanderson, give me more. Everyone on this train is a suspect. This is a murder mystery, like, you know, a whodunit, and it takes place on a train, if you can't tell by the title. It's, of course, the sequel to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, which I read, I think it must have been last year. I read it shortly after it was published, I believe, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really fun, really funny, and I loved the way that Benjamin Stevenson tells a story. So I got this one from the library, and I read it pretty fast, and you know what, I enjoyed it. I found that it was not as, I didn't love it as much as the first one. I feel like I cared a lot more about the characters in the first one, like his character development and distinction between characters. I found a lot more interesting. It was a lot easier for me to like keep everybody straight, you know, tell everyone apart. Why do I care about these people? In this one, I was like, some of the characters were just confused in my mind. Some of them just kind of like merged into one person because I couldn't tell the difference between some of them. But it was still a fun story and an interesting, you know, murder mystery. So absolutely, I will read more by Benjamin Stevenson. And actually, I just got, Amazon had a sale on the third one that he's got, the Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret, or whatever it is. And so I did get that. I think I got it for like 99 cents or something when they just put it on sale. So I'm going to be reading that. If he does more books like this, you know, in this series, 100%, I'm going to be reading them. So I'm going to put this. Yeah, I feel confident. Confident it'll go right there. Yes, please, Benjamin Stevenson. I would like more books from you. Thank you. All right, Goblins, Gadgets, and Gourds. This was also a Kickstarter book that I got, and for what it was, I think it was great. The writing was just fine. The way that this author told the story, I thought was fine. The reason I'm not going to rank it super high, but also I would read more, is because I think I just had different expectations going in for what the story was going to be. Like, the author made it very clear, this is not going to be like, this is not going to be like some legends and lattes. There's like some adult content in this book, and so like that's totally fine. But it was definitely more heavily romance than I was expecting, and I'm just like, I started off invested in the story because it was about like our main character, who obviously is a goblin, and he's a merchant, which is unusual for goblins. Like, they're not normally doing this out in public. And you know, so we're following him as he's trying to like run his business and, you know, come out with ideas that the public is going to be receptive to. And then it just kind of turns into a romance novel. I was just like, I don't really, I mean, it would have been fine if it was more balanced, I think, you know, like between the normal plot and the romance, but like literally it just shifted to like, now we're just reading a romance novel. And I was like, well, now I don't care. So, unfortunately, it's not a bad book. And you know what, if you want something that's like a cute romance story, I'm not going to shit all over this author, right? Because this is an indie book. There was nothing wrong with this book. This was purely my personal preference. For me, this book was just okay. But if you want something that's just like, I don't know, it's cute, it's cozy, there's romance in it, you'd probably really like this. I think you can probably get it on Amazon, like, you know, like, as far as like a digital copy. You can go to the author's website too, I believe, and get a copy of the book. It's worthwhile. I mean, it was fine for me. It just personally wasn't my thing. Oh God. All right. It pains me to talk about the next two that we're going to talk about, because when I tell you, all right, we're going to talk about God Killer by Hannah Kaner. All right. When I tell you my hopes were so fucking high based on the cover for this book. Look at this cover, okay? This is metal as fuck. This is so beautiful. It's striking. This might be the most beautiful cover that I have ever seen of a book in my life. And it's called God Killer. Man, that sounds so epic. Like, I want to follow a character that's like hunting gods and is like a badass reputation and is like taking out gods. What I got. I struggled to get through this book. I almost DNF'd it many times. The pacing was messed up. The main character was mean. She was just mean. Like, she's an asshole. Not in like a way where I'm like, oh, but she's got a heart of gold. I'm like, nah, she's just an asshole. I liked the other characters. There was almost no god killing in this. So I feel like the title is a little misleading. If you're going in wanting some badass, like, god killing going on, you aren't gonna find it here. I thought that the relationships between some of the main characters that we're following felt incredibly forced. So I finished it, but unfortunately, I'm resentful. I'm resentful that I finished it. I will say the last 20% saved me from not like throwing the book across the room. The last 20% were, if the rest of the book had been like that, I would have, this rating would be higher. It would be bumped up to a high meh, it's okay, probably. But I'm not gonna read an 80% book that I find unenjoyable, let's say, to read maybe 20% that I'm like, yeah, okay, this is fine. That 20% still wasn't giving me what I wanted this book to give to me based on, you know, unrealistic expectations set by the publisher with the title of this book and the cover. But as it is, I was resentful that I finished this book. But you know what? That last 20%, I thought to myself, okay, because this is supposed to be a trilogy. So I thought, okay, the last 20% was much stronger. So I'm gonna pick up the second book, which I did. We'll go down. Where are you? Sunbringer. Here you are. So I'm gonna follow through with the second book. And you know, if it continues like the last 20%, then like it's gonna be solid. It's gonna be solid, right? Somehow it was even more annoying than the first 80%. Look, unfortunately this one, I DNF'd that book. I really wanted to love these. I really did. I had high hopes. People hyped them up all over. Not for me. Maybe it will be for you, you know? Maybe you won't be annoyed by the main character and you won't think she was a real jerk and you won't find the relationship. You might have different feelings about the series than I do. And if you do, I think that's awesome because these books are beautiful. And so if you own them, you get to own these beautiful books. I wish that I loved them because these are so beautiful. But I can't love a book just because it's beautiful for me. Like, this did not work for me as much as I wanted it. I desperately wanted it to, but it didn't. So I will not be reading the third book. I think the third book's coming out in the next few months in 2025. I won't be reading that. Just One Damn Thing After Another by Jodi Taylor. This follows a group of like they're historians that do time traveling. It's very lighthearted. One of my friends, it's one of his favorite series, so he told me years ago I should read this, and it's been on my TBR for a very long time, but I finally was like, you know what, I might as well try it. And you know what, it was pretty enjoyable. There's a lot of time travel, a lot of like double cross, but like very lighthearted. And I mean, there was a sprinkling of romance in here. This book kind of just had like everything, and I could tell this series is just going to be very light reading. And you know what, I like that kind of thing before I go to sleep, and that's when I read this one, was before I would go to bed. And you know what, it served the purpose. So I'm gonna put this under yes please, because yes please I would read more, not because it's necessarily like, it's not some fantastic piece of literature, right? I'm not like, oh my god, this is amazing. It's fine. But like, for my enjoyment, yeah, it was good. I read the short story that comes next, The Very First Damned Thing. It's sort of like, it's a very little story, and you know what? I put that there because I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna keep reading this series. Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the last book in the Throne of Glass series. I read the entire Throne of Glass series yet last year because I'm like, I need to understand why people really like this. So I did. I read the whole thing. This is the only book though that I read in December from that series. I finished the rest of them before that. So I thought that this ending was rushed. It felt incredibly rushed through, especially compared to so starting with book 4, you know, 4 and on, her books got stronger as far as the writing and storytelling, and like the characters, you know, much more interesting, much less cringy as I was reading. And I was optimistic for a solid end to this, you know, this series, because I'm like, for what it's doing, right? Like YA fantasy, I can understand why people are into this. You know, she's doing a pretty good job for YA fantasy, and so I was interested to see the last book. And these books are not small. I think at least a couple of them, the later ones, are like 800 pages, right? Like, these are not tiny books. So I picked up Kingdom of Ash, the last book, and I'm reading it, and it just felt like the pacing was so rushed. It was not what I was expecting, not what I wanted. It just felt like boom, 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 just like bullet points that the author had to hit. You know, she just wanted to check it off a list, and it did not work for me. I thought that the book prior to that, well, I would say the 2 books prior to this last one were probably the strongest in the series, in my opinion, as far as like how the plot was developed, you know, characters, the writing, etc. This one, I was like, I don't know why she seemed like she felt the need to rush through it. So I wasn't resentful that I read it, but I was like, this was okay, I guess. Loot in the Mist. This one is recommended all the time in like the Reddit fantasy sub, where I'm looking at stuff often. And I have to say, this is another one where I think I was just not really in the right mood to read it. I also thought that this was going to be more of a book that would be like good for me to read as I'm like about to go to sleep, because I read much more chill books when I'm like about to go to sleep, because I don't want my brain like firing on all cylinders, trying to figure out a plot or what's going to come next, things like. When I'm about to go to bed, I want something that's just going to be like calm, nice, pleasant, chill. There was a lot going on in this, and I feel like this was my fault that I chose to read it then. I probably should have put it down and decided to read it during normal waking hours instead, but I didn't. So I ended up feeling like it was just okay. But much like Dune, in the next few years, I'm gonna reread this because I think I would probably have a higher rating if I read it in a more appropriate setting. Yeah, so you know what, I did like it more than Dune though in my reread. Yeah, I'm gonna put you right there. All right. Murder at Spindle Manor. This is like I keep wanting to call it a gaslight mystery. That's different. Gaslight mystery is different. It's a gas lamp mystery. It's fantasy. It was enjoyable. You know what? It was fun. It was a little funny. It wasn't that funny. It was a little funny. You know what? I'm gonna put it right there. Yes, please. Cut. Woo! Why does my thing keep scrolling like that? It's so crazy. Anyway, I'm absolutely gonna read more by this author because I thought it was fun. So, the first Percy Jackson, I read that for the first time, and you know what? I can see why it is wildly popular, and I'm planning to continue the rest of the series, hopefully 2025, if things work out, but my God, my TBR is out of control, so that's my goal anyway. But you know, kid finds out that he's like involved with the Greek gods, and the Greek gods are like real, and it's a whole thing. So you know what? I enjoyed it. Yes, please. And that is, yes, please. Give me some more. There we go. My mouse is very like scrolly. I don't know what's going on with that today. Okay, we are going to talk about the Gentleman Bastards next, I guess. Okay, let's talk about those Gentleman Bastards. We're gonna go in order on this one. The Lies of Locke Lamora. I hella loved this, right? We've got a group of thieves slash criminals, but they're like sophisticated. They're pulling off like plots that they're really putting a lot of thought into, and I loved it. I was gripped from the very beginning. I love the characters that are in it, and I just had a really great time reading that. So this is gonna be probably maybe oh God, it's so hard to know because you know what? Those two, Liza Locke Lamora and the Bone Ships, honestly, loved them like equally for different reasons. So like, don't judge necessarily the order of this top tier because I hella loved them all. Red Seas Under Red Skies, the second book in the trilogy, I also hella loved this. This took place on ships, so obviously I loved it. Had a great time. And then the third one, where are you? Where are you? There you are, Republic of Thieves. Did not love this one as much, but that's only because one of the main like characters that we're watching in it is one that I didn't really care for. And so that's the only reason though. It was still a great book and a solid end to this. I know it's not really the end, quote unquote, but for now it is. So where am I going to put you? I think I enjoyed you. Yeah, I would say right there. It was a strong yes, please. And yes, please, Scott Lynch, please print the rest of the Gentleman Bastards, okay? Sabriel by Garth Nix. This is the first book in the series. What is it? It's like the Lost Kingdom, Forgotten. What is it? Hold on. Let me look. I'm not going to sit here and just speculate when we can look. The Old Kingdom. I was close. All right. The Old Kingdom series. Sabriel, we follow this teen girl who is like, her father is a very important dude who can do like magic stuff. Lots of people know who he is. They need his help for various things. He goes missing. She needs to go on like a quest adventure to go find him. It's fantastic. And I'm actually reading the second book in the series as well, and I plan to continue. So I am gonna go with yes, please. Where do you go in yes, please? Let's think about this. Do we go right there? You know what? Let's put you right there. I feel like that's fair. That's a fair place for Sabriel. Okay. Shogun by James Clavell. This was a fantastic book. One of my favorite books, honestly, that I've ever read. Like probably a new favorite of all time. I'm sure that you've heard about Shogun because that miniseries just came out based on this book this year, and it was wildly popular. See, you can see these little emojis again. They keep popping in because of my scrolling. Anyway, Shogun, excellent. Internal monologuing by James Clavell for his characters so that you get to know them. Incredible. Absolutely loved it. I would say... yeah. It deserves... It's top tier for sure. But I think, yeah, excellent. If you're looking for a really enjoyable historical fiction, pick it up. And then you know what? And then watch the, well, I guess it's not a miniseries anymore. Go watch the series. It was great. Starter Villain by John Scalzi. Did I pick up this book purely because it's got a cat wearing a suit on the cover? Yeah, I sure did. And you know what? I have no regrets. It was fun. It was a John Scalzi fantasy type book that was very fun. Why? Look at that. And so you know what? It's going to go into, yes, please. Where do you go though? Where do you go in here? Yeah, you know what? It was great. I also read the first book in a trilogy by Janny Wirtz this year. I read Storm Warden, and this might be my first Janny Wirtz that I've ever read. If I read Janny Wirtz, it was many, many, many years ago. I really liked it, and I wish that I had picked up book 2 like right away, but I didn't. So yes, while I really liked it, and I'm gonna say yes please, I may need to like do like a quick like at least a skim reread to remember all the things that happen in this before I pick up the second one. But it's on my list to continue and finish out this trilogy. Now, where do you go? I think right there. Another book by James Clavell, Taipan. It's the second book in his Asian saga. I really loved this. I didn't love it as much as Shogun, but I thought it was so good. This takes place at the founding of Hong Kong, and we're watching the group of people there basically wrestle for power over the island. And so I am going to put this in... yeah, you know what? I think it, yeah, right there. It was really good. Again, James Clavell does excellent inner monologuing with characters, and I really like that when it's believable, and it just makes me be able to relate to characters so much more. And this book, once again, just like Shogun, it delivered on that. The Appeal by Janice Hallett. This is a murder mystery slash various other mystery. It's told through mixed media, so we're reading things like text messages, emails, news bulletins, things like that as we follow along with what happened among a group of people that's like a small community theater, and there's a lot of drama, no pun intended, that goes on with these people, and we're just following it as we try to solve these mysteries that are going on. I had a great time. This was my first Janice Hallett that I read. And you know what? I was like, yes, please, I will take more. I will take more of you. I flew through this thing. So you know what? You're going to go right there because it was great. It was great. And speaking of, I also read The Christmas Appeal, which is sort of, I think it's longer than, it's a novella. It's tiny. It's not, it didn't take very long for me to get through this. Once again, it's told through mixed media. It follows most of the same people that we read about, like we read their story in The Appeal. Most of those same people are in The Christmas Appeal. And it's yet another little mystery that we've got to follow along with and solve. Also very enjoyable. Not as enjoyable as The Appeal, but I feel like it's just because it was much shorter, right? It's not supposed to, like, what is happening? It's not supposed to be. No, don't mind me, my exclamation as my screen is all over the place. It's not supposed to be as, like, gripping. Well, of course I'm sure the author and the publisher want it to be as gripping, but, like, it's shorter. Of course it's not going to be as much as the first one. You know what I'm saying, right? You know. Anyway, it was good. I enjoyed it. Let's put you right there. Okay. Starling House. This is the one where I was like, am I getting it confused with A Study in Drowning? Because not only did I read them around the same time, but I had some similar feelings about them. I read A Study in Drowning for one of my Reddit bingo squares. Same with Starling House. And so this was my first book by Alex E. Harrow. Let me look up my thoughts on this one, because once again, this and A Study in Drowning get mixed up in my brain. Hold on. All right, so for Starling House, I did finish it. I just checked over my notes, and my feelings were resentful. Very resentful, okay? In fact, I would say probably more than A Study in Drowning. At this point, I couldn't even tell you what it was about. It was so forgettable for me, except that I did find the main character deeply annoying. I found the relationships in the book not believable. And you could tell the author wanted this book to be like gothic and like broody, right? Like, well, very broody and moody and aesthetic and all those things. It didn't work for me. It felt very forced. I've never read another book by this author, so I don't know if this is how she normally writes. But this did not work, and I hated it, and I resent the fact that I read it. So, all right, The Graveyard Shift. I don't even know why I read this. There's ebooks that I have because I get them at like 99 cents or whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, all right, it's 99 cents, whatever. This was one of them, and it was about this dude who starts working at like this supernatural convenience store that's sort of, I think it's sort of like got a portal to hell in it. So, hence the cover, you can see. You know what? I still don't quite know how I feel about this book. Like, it definitely doesn't fall into a yes please, because there's a lot that could have been done better in this. Like, the writing quality was not what I would prefer in a book. And the main character, this dude, he is very annoying, and I didn't like him. But I'm very intrigued to know more about this supernatural convenience store. And this is a series, so I do want to continue reading it. But man, I'm sorry, but it does not deserve to be in the same category as like Joe Abercrombie. No. So look, I've got to put it in here, but I'm going to put it, oh God, out of respect for Frank Herbert and Hope Mirrlees. I'll put it here, but I do want to read more, and I plan to, and I don't know why, but sometimes we just need like something mindless, right? And that's basically what it was. So, The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. If you're just looking for, I don't know, a stereotypical Halloween story written by, you know, he's a great author. This was great. It follows some kids as they go on a supernatural adventure at Halloween, and it gave me what I wanted. I read it during, I'm pretty sure I read this in October, and it was great. It gave me what I wanted. So you know what? Yes, please. Yes, please. Now where do you go? Where do you go up here? Why? There we go. Yeah, I feel good about that. Okay. The House Witch. Okay. This is supposed to be a cozy fantasy, and probably I know a lot of people really love this book. I had to DNF that book. But I will say it's not because like, I didn't think it wasn't bad. It was fine. I just found it very boring. So like, I think I got maybe, I don't even know, maybe 30%. I gave it a real chance, but I I couldn't do it. I thought it was boring. I didn't care about any of the characters. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm reading this. So I stopped. I stopped. All right, the next one is, it's a mystery book. I feel like this was written in the 30s. But you know, I like classic mysteries. I want to read a whodunit. And so, you know, I pick up the oldies. This was one of them. And it was fine as far as a murder mystery goes, but we had a weird chunk of this book where we suddenly turned into like a bootlegging investigation. And it makes sense, the context of, you know, the time period when this was written. Readers probably would have found that like interesting to read about, but we're like 100 years past Prohibition at this point, and I'm just like, it wasn't even bootlegging like in an interesting way. It was just like, it was a very tedious explanation about an investigation into bootlegging. And I was like, I don't care. I don't care. Let's just go back to the murder and focus on that. Like, let's focus on solving that. Cause like, I don't care if these people want to drink some whiskey. Like, I don't care. So, but you know what? In my defense too, it's not just because we're so far removed from Prohibition. It's because the explanation of like that part of the investigation, specifically into the bootlegging, was boring. It was done in a very uninteresting way. And I'm like, no. So you know what? You know what? Let's leave it at meh. It's okay, because most of the book, it was fine. It was fine. It was a murder mystery. It was what I was looking for. But man, what an annoying like segue into a bootlegging investigation. So we're gonna leave this as, yeah, I feel like bottom of the meh, it's okay category. All right. The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This, of course, is a classic, and I read it for the first time. We follow a story about the last unicorn as she tries to find out, is she in fact the last unicorn? It was great. It was heartwarming, and you know what? I will read more by Peter S. Beagle because it was good. So why? Oh God, I don't know why. Why do these emojis up here annoy me so much? But they really do. Go away. Go away. There we go. All right. So where do you belong in this category? I feel like I'm gonna give you the respect you deserve, and I'm gonna put you right there. Yeah. It's good. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I have not read this in years, and I truly, like, I could not remember what the actual, and it's not even a novella, right? It's like a short, is it a short story? It was very, very brief. It's a very brief story. Let's just say that. I forgot that Ichabod is like a real asshole. So yeah, I read Sleepy Hollow, and it was okay. It's okay. You deserve a spot that's like right in the middle. It was okay. If you're looking for, you know, you want to read something that's foundationally viewed as like a classic piece of fiction, yeah, it's fine. The River of Silver. You know what? Let's talk about, because I've got the other two books from the Daevabad trilogy as well. So let's see here. Kingdom of Copper, second book in the Daevabad trilogy. I enjoyed it probably the most of all three of the books in the Daevabad trilogy. So I am going to put you, because it made me want to read the last one. It did. I am going to put you... Yeah, you go right there. You go right there. Now the third one, Empire of Gold. I thought it was fine. It wrapped everything up, but not in a way that I personally wanted. And And of course, it's all about me. Okay, so she, the author really should have consulted me before she wrote this conclusion. It was, it wasn't bad. It's just, it was not what I was hoping to see as a conclusion, but it wasn't bad. It was a fine end to the trilogy. But just for my personal feelings, I'm gonna put it in, meh, it was okay. But you know what? Top of the meh, it's okay pile, okay? But The River of Silver is a collection of short stories from the Day of a Bad World with the characters that we followed in the trilogy. I really enjoyed it. I thought that the short stories were a really good format to tell some additional background for characters or things that were going on sort of between books maybe that we didn't see. So it, and it reminded me after I finished Empire of Gold, you know what? This is why I was like into this series. It was an enjoyable one. I'm gonna put you right there. I'm not even gonna apologize for this one. The Serpent of Wings and Night. F that book. I don't even think I made it a chapter. I found the writing not, I was cringing within like the first page. So I don't even know what the story is about because I only got a couple pages in. No, just no, nope. All right, War of the Flowers by Tad Williams. I really enjoyed this book. We follow a character who goes from our world into the land of the fairies. It was excellent, and the world building that Tad Williams can do is he does so much with what I think takes so many other authors more pages. Now this was not a small book, but so many authors, of course, in fantasy were writing long series, and I do love that, don't get me wrong, but Tad Williams can do so much with fewer pages, and he really did that. He did a great job at building a world of fairy and letting you get lost in it along with the main character. I really enjoyed this, and you know what? I was like, yes, please give me more Tad Williams. So I'm gonna put you, yeah, you know what? This was a strong, I really enjoyed that book. As I look at the other books in this category, this was a strong installment for Yes Please. So yeah, if you're looking for a Tad Williams book, not a bad option to start with, because it's just, it's a one book. It's a one book, no shit, right? But it's a self-contained story, so you don't have to commit to like this long series. You can just read this one book and, get an idea of the capabilities of his writing. All right, let's talk about Brandon Sanderson next, but let's start with Warbreaker. I really enjoyed Warbreaker. This was one where it's not a small book, but I was like, you know what, I really wish it was longer, because I felt like we didn't get to delve into the magic or the gods and all the various things in this book that I really wanted to know more about. This is another one where I think he's gonna write a sequel or more books, isn't he? So I am gonna put you, I did enjoy this one more than Elantris. Let's see, where do you belong? Yeah, you belong right there. Come on. Yeah, I feel good about that. I really enjoyed it, and I want to know more. I want to go back to that world, and I hope that he writes more books for Warbreaker. The Way of Kings, so good. Even though we spent hundreds of pages talking about bridges, loved it anyway. And this is gonna go, oh gosh, yeah, I think solidly it belongs right behind, like number two and Yes Please. But Words of Radiance, this is, hella loved it, okay? This was fantastic, and I hella loved it, and I got through it super fast, especially considering what a massive brick it is of a book. Words of Radiance, I wish I was reading the third book right now, but unfortunately my reading order for the Cosmere has me going to read some other things at the moment before I can go back into Stormlight Archives, so I will have to wait. But Words of Radiance, incredible second installment, pacing was good. I really loved learning more about the characters and seeing, you know, magic and magic develop, and it was just great. And Brandon Sanderson knows how to tell a story in a way that I really enjoy. So, Thorn Hedge by T. Kingfisher. This is a novella, and it was great. It was once again like a fairy tale, sort of turned on its head. This one was, I believe it was Sleeping Beauty, right? Kind of like mixed with Rapunzel. I don't know. It was great. I loved it, and very short. So if you're looking to start somewhere with T. Kingfisher, I mean, I feel like this is probably maybe 100 pages, so you don't even have to spend that much of your life to find out if you are maybe going to want to read more from this author. If you pick this book up, you know, just do it. A little taste test of T. Kingfisher. So I really enjoyed this one. Let's see. You're going to be top tier. You're going to be top tier. Yeah. Yeah, right there. Okay. I read the first book in Cradle. I enjoyed it. I feel like I see a lot of people all the time say that the first book isn't very good, but I enjoyed it well enough. It made me, it made me want to read more of the series. So, you know, we're following a character who is trying to like level up powers. He starts at a significant disadvantage for what like his peers, where his peers are at in his community, and he's going on an adventure to maybe try to improve that. And you know what, I'm along for it. So I enjoyed this one. I'm gonna put you like right there because I really did actually go through that pretty fast, and it made me want to read more. Okay. Voyage of the Damned. This one I really wanted to love. I really, really did. Like, it sounds so fun, a fantasy murder mystery. I love fantasy. I love murder mysteries. I love fantasy murder mysteries. And this cover is beautiful. And do I judge books by their cover? Hell yeah, I do. But I read it and I was just kind of like, meh, it's okay. I found, once again, the main character rather annoying. I just did. I felt like the mystery was fine. It felt a little predictable, but the fantasy elements felt very just kind of like haphazard thrown in there, and it was like, it's fine. Also, this, I think that this is supposed to be an adult novel, but it did not feel like one. Which, I mean, if it's not, I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. Just commenting, it didn't feel like an adult fantasy or an adult mystery. It felt like, maybe new adult, you know? Like, I wouldn't say it was YA, but maybe a new adult. I haven't really read very many books I think that would be considered new adult, so I guess I can't say for sure. I'm not an expert on it, but it didn't feel grown up. Anyway, not terrible. Just my personal preference. I was like, it's fine. Yeah, so, meh. Wraithblade. Wraithblade was having a Kickstarter this year, so I decided to borrow it from, where did I borrow it from? I guess I borrowed it from the library because I did not buy this. I know that. I did not buy it. So I guess my library must have had a copy of it. So I read probably about 30% of it, but DNF that book. I did not like the writing style. The main character felt like he was... I felt like as I was reading it that I was supposed to find the main character much more interesting and badass than I did. which I found very distracting and made me like, it made me not like the main character. So unfortunately, or fortunately, because you know what, I'm glad that I borrowed it and started to read it before I spent money on that Kickstarter, because the Kickstarter looked pretty cool. But if I had spent that money on that book and then I got it and I read it and I had spent that money on that book, I would have been we would need a new category for, I don't know, just like set my money on fire, I guess. Because yeah, no. So I didn't like it, and people have said like, oh, it gets better as you go on. I don't care to find out. If you love it, I think that that's awesome. If it didn't bother you the way that the characters, like the character was written or anything like that, then that's cool, because I feel like, again, the story had a lot of potential with the plot that I could tell, like the directions that it was going in, but the style of how it was told and how the character, like the main character, was presented to me, no. And you know what? I didn't even intend for this final book to be the final book, but you know what? I'm not disappointed about it. So we're going to go with Tail Chaser Song, once again by Tad Williams. And you know what? I loved this book, and whoop, this is top tier, okay? This is top tier. Whoop, you emojis, you go away. Yeah, you know, whoop, there we go. Top tier, but slightly down, because you know what? Not all the animals make it out of this book, but Tail Chaser is the main character. He's a cat, and we follow him as he goes on an adventure to find one of his missing cat friends. She's nowhere to be found one day, and he doesn't know what happened to her, so he has to venture out of his normal community where he lives to go out kind of into the wilderness and go on an adventure to find her. Along the way, he meets other groups of animals that he's never like dealt with before, and he encounters an ongoing situation of some very bad animals doing some very bad things to other animals, and he decides, I cannot abide this. Tail Chaser cannot abide it. And you know what? This is a great book. Honestly, it's heartwarming. And if you can get past the animals and dangers, multiple, yeah, I guess there is multiple plural dangers are in this book for these animals, then you know what? It's excellent. And I believe it was his first published novel. It's incredibly impressive. The world he builds, once again, so much world building in so few pages. You know, this is a standalone. It's so good. It's relatively short, and I just loved it. And you know what? I hella loved it because it's top tier. And that's all of the books. That is the last one, and we have ranked them. We've ranked them all. And I feel pretty good about this. Let's go through, just make sure we did it all correctly. Yeah. I feel, you know what? Not as many resentful as I thought there would be. Overall though, like, I feel like this means, look how good of a reading year that I had, right? Like, most of the books that I read are books that I like really enjoyed. And if I didn't really enjoy them, I was at least like, I mean, I didn't have a bad time. I would say this was a success. For me, this is a reading success. I don't want to waste time reading books that I don't enjoy. I don't want to torture myself in that way, right? I only want to read books that I am really going to like. And looking at it like this, you know, in a graph all together, I'm like, man, I really enjoyed the books that I read, and I spent so much time reading, and especially, you know, the other things that I have in my life, right? Like, my schedule can be pretty demanding, so I don't necessarily have tons of free time to just read endlessly, and it wouldn't really matter, you know, if I loved every book or not. But I don't have that much free time, and it is valuable, and I want to read books that I'm really going to be into. And so overall, I would say 2024 in that regard was a huge success, and I am hoping when I do this video at the end of next year, I'll be able to say the same thing, that, you know, 2025, huge success too. So that is all of my ranking for 2024 for the books that I've read. We're finally here. We finally did it. So let me know in the comments, have you read any of these books? What are your thoughts about them? What were your top books of the year? What were the books that you were like, DNF that book? Do you DNF? If you don't DNF, do you have books that you're resentful about that you read this year? Let me know that too. Let me know of any new all-time favorites, or just, you know, how your reading year was overall. Do you feel like you enjoyed most of what you read? Do you feel like maybe you didn't? You want to go in a different direction next year? We'll see. We'll see. Let me know. Let's talk about it. All right. That is all that I've got for today. And as always, I really appreciate you coming by. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.